Is the 5-day work week outdated? With burnout on the rise and workplaces scrambling to retain talent, the 4-day work week is getting momentum, but does it actually work? Today, we're looking into the future of work with Christian Miran, an expert in organisational transformation and the architect behind Medibank's 4-day work week pilot. We'll see how fewer hours can boost productivity, why psychological safety matters now more than ever, and how to combat burnout. That's this episode of Money and a Good Life. Welcome to Money and a Good Life. I'm Stephanie Coombs, and with me is Ryan Watson, Tribeca's very own advocate for the 4-day work week. Ryan, you pushed for this for Tribeca back in 2021, which is well before it was on most people's radars. How do you rate that decision?
It was a really good and positive decision for us at the time. I think it was brave because it was also during the start of COVID. We're a big one, as we all know, around living the good life. And I'm really big on Tribeca and our tribe living that example for our clients. So if we're not in great balance, and we have that work-life balance, which we'll discuss today, and we're not living the best of our good life, it's really hard for us to advise our clients to do the same.
You got to practice what you preach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's all about substance.
Well, obviously, joining us today is Christian Miran, an executive and leadership coach, speaker, and someone who's spent over 20 years redesigning how companies work. Christian has led organisational transformations across industries from healthcare to finance. And he's also a bit obsessed with the idea of energy over hustle. Christian, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
And now, does work need to leave us drained?
Oh, such a good question. No, it doesn't. I think work can be such an amazing thing for our sense of achievement, our sense of pride. I think it's, in a lot of ways, people take a lot of courage in what they do in their work and push themselves out there. And I see work as this amazing opportunity to really make meaning out of our lives. But it shouldn't be the only thing. And I think this is part of the challenge. It's got living the good life is more than work.
So why is it then that some people can love their job and find meaning for it and also get exhausted by it and maybe burn out and crash? Big question, but what do you think are some of the reasons that happens?
Well, I think there's in some ways, burnout is a common problem in society at the moment. When you look at the numbers, and in particularly in Australia, there's reports saying that up to 80% of workers are facing burnout, which is massive. So this is a systemic problem.
80%, Christian?
80%.
Wow.
Yep. So this is a massive problem that's happening in the world, not just Australia, but Australians are feeling the pinch of it. And you look at what's happened over the last few decades, people are working a lot more. There is less boundaries between home and work. And I think COVID was a really great example of where that kind of ramped up. And it's amazing to see, a company like Tribeca to take action to address that. But systemically, there's problems with burnout. And I think one of the causes is that people put so much weight into their work. Australians are really proud people. We work, we hustle, we grind. And I think that has become a real habit in a lot of people's lives.
And I mean, there's obviously the human cost of burnout, which is enormous. I mean, we've only got one precious life, and I think that we should and have an obligation on some level to try and enjoy that life. But if we're going to look at it purely from a business perspective, it's bad business. People burning out is bad business. I mean, you're a business owner. You know what the cost of having to find someone new or support someone through that. It's just better to stop it before it happens.
And I mean this when I say it. Our greatest asset at Tribeca is our tribe, first and foremost, as well as our clients. Like, a lot of people might look at the clients first, but if you don't have the tribe that's nurtured and fostered the right type of culture, well, we're not going to be there to serve our clients. So they are our greatest asset.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been in workplaces, media, surprise, surprise, Burnout Central, where it's not just when someone was like, I've got to take some leave because I'm, mentally exhausted, or I can't finish this project, I've got to step out. Like, there's a lot of that pressure and pain, but there's also the pressure of working with people who have just checked out.
Yeah.
And it's like, if we didn't let them get to the point where they just checked out, it would have been so much easier for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm finding it very, very prevalent at the moment in the industry. I think it's worse than I've ever seen it before too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a fascinating thing, isn't it? Because on one hand, we have burnout, and then on the other hand, you have this disengagement with our work. And so you can't just solve for the time piece. You have to actually solve for the work itself. And that's what I notice in a lot of organisations today. The way that we're structuring work, the way that we think about time, the way we think about how we write goals and the jobs to be done, we really need to look at this, and this is why I say it's a systemic thing, because you need to look at these different elements of what is this fueling someone's enjoyment? And let's be really honest with people when it's not. You know, I have this practice that I sort of share with leaders is when you first hire someone, the first question I like to ask is, what's your next job? How is this helping you get to your next role? Create that honesty system so that if people are feeling checked out, you can really think about how do you redesign what they're doing or tackle things in a different way to fuel their performance.
How do people receive that question, Christian? Because it's something I haven't heard before, and some people I imagine are taken aback by that.
But in the spirit of honesty, let's be honest. Yeah. This is not a job for everyone, right? Yeah. Like this isn't going to last you necessarily 20 years. That's not how things work nowadays. Mm-hmm. And when my dad worked, he stayed in the same business for 30 years and did the same thing. Yeah. But things has shifted a lot now. Yeah. So I think people are a lot more open to the idea of that. But as a leader, you have to create that, you know, because I don't think people will naturally expect it. So by just opening the door and listening to what people have to say.
And I can imagine from that question, Christian, you create obviously openness, but you create a lot of honesty as well. So understanding there are people on a career journey these days, and if people understand there's an openness and like an open door policy or an honesty around that, then they will share with their leaders around what they want to achieve, what motivates them.
Exactly.
And it could actually lead to greater longevity.
100%. If you've got that honesty. And the other side of this is when we talk about things like psychological safety and feeling like you can speak up, that is very much looking at like ideal conditions. But, you know, that stuff is great, but the practical element of it is for someone that's checked out, do they have another option of a job to go to?
Yeah.
Because what's keeping them in that job is probably the paycheck.
Yep.
But if you have options and you've discussed those options with someone, whether it be your boss at work or someone else, and you feel confident enough, I've got a plan B. I don't have to be hooked in. I think that's one of the ways we can get a lot better at dealing with the ones that are checked out.
Christian, you've helped major companies redesign how they work, and one of the things has been the 4-day work week and in an ASX-listed company. So that must have been a terrifyingly huge task. Like that, I can't imagine how you would try and roll that into such a big organisation. What's a surprising thing that you've learnt from trying to get this across the line and this experience?
Well, I originally thought of it as a really simple thing. And I thought, you know, women in particular have been doing part-time work for a long time. Why should this be so hard? Yeah. You know, like it's a simple thing, just one day off a week. And I remember when I first started thinking about the project, and I just literally wrote down, all right, well, we'll just get a few teams in. And once I actually started unpacking it, we're talking about completely changing how people work. In the Medibank model, we adopted the 100-80-100 model, so it's not a compressed work week, and Ryan's the same at Tribeca. Yeah. You're getting paid the same amount for less time. So you've really have to think about what work is getting done, what's the most important work. And so I learnt so much about that element in itself of this isn't just about cutting time, it's really about looking at your whole business and how you structure it.
One of my friends, she had a kid, came back to the workplace, and then she decided to, you know, in those early years, go down to 4 days a week. And so the company was supporting with that. They were like, okay, you've gone from 5 days to 4 days, your pay will be cut accordingly, right? Which is, I think, how it often happens.
Yep. And that works on a spreadsheet. Yep.
Works on a spreadsheet. And it's like you work less hours, you get paid less, except for the fact that this person has actually found that she's doing exactly the same amount of work. No one was brought on to take that extra day. And so in her instance, she's working 5 days in 4 days and getting paid less for it. And that, to me, is a real problem. Yeah. Is this something that you've heard before?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think I've seen that just working inside organisations for a long time. You know, people that come back from parental leave and they're trying to make these adjustments and they're doing it in isolation. your friend, I imagine she might be the only one in that team that might be working in that way, which means it's really hard actually because everyone else is working on the Friday. They're sending you stuff ready for Monday and you've got to play catch up. And that's why I think you have to really look at, well, what's the work getting done? Are you adjusting that? Are you making accommodations? How do you set goals for that person?
And conversely to that, Steph, I was at a party on Saturday night and I was chatting with a mate's wife. And I won't mention the business's name, but it's a big, big business in Geelong. And they've got 3 young kids. She said to me, they've got flexible work. So she does 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., then can drop her youngest kid at primary school, then does a 9 to 3 and picks. Perfect. When she started there, they said, how do you want to work?
Yeah, great.
Much better.
And I know what she's like in terms of being a worker. They would get more out of it. It is full pay, but it's flexible. It works for them. Very happy and very loyal, and she's being promoted there as well.
Yeah.
And it does it. It creates loyalty when it's done well.
That's the other side of it.
My friend has said that, if she could go back in time, she'd just be a little less naive about how that, and she would have fought harder for work to drop off or fought harder for the pay to stay the same because she feels like she's doing the same thing and has largely just lost a fifth of her pay and the company, great outcome for them.
Yeah.
Could not. So I think that, surely if you are negotiating these things separately to a business, because not everyone's going to be as forward-thinking as Tribeca, sometimes you will have to try and advocate for the arrangement that you like. But these are things people should be aware of.
Absolutely. I had a similar experience actually when I first started at Medibank. I was working a 4-day just the workload. It just was not realistic because no one else was working that way. So absolutely being really aware of that up front. I think one of the things that we have to realise is we have to be kind to ourselves, We've grown up feeling like we need to be busy. You talk to I talk to my mates and hey, how you going? Well, really busy at work. And it's like we wear it as a bit of a badge of honour in our society. Yeah. And I think we have to really think about is it about being busy or is it about fueling your life? Is it about living a good life?
Yeah.
Because I think that's what's important. And we almost just need to take a step back before we go into anything.
How do people help create that change for themselves, Christian? Because I completely agree, this busy badge of honour, but people can start with how can they start creating that change for themselves? Yeah,
that's a really good question. I think the first thing is almost doing a bit of a prioritization process for yourself of what are the rocks in my life, and the old misconception that you can, if you tackle the big rocks first, and then you've got space for all the little rocks to come in. But that is just cramming more into the glass. That's actually not what happens. That's not actually how time works. You've really got to have to think about, what have I got time for? What's it time for now? I use this model. It's just called WIN. What's it time for now? What's important now? And, through your different stages of your career, through your life, there's different things that are going to come up, whether it be like I'm at the situation where I've got, parents a little bit older now. So what's it time for now, I think, is in putting a priority on that. I coach my kids basketball. Yeah. So I want to make sure I've got time in my life to do that. So I'll say no to things.
And so if we've got people listening and they're metaphorically on the treadmill and it's 12 or 14, like they're running, we know that they probably can't jump off that treadmill, but how do they just reduce the life speed, if that makes sense, so they can start to reconcile and take stock? Yeah,
there's almost a lot – sometimes people may not have choices about the hours that they work because they just need the money, and that's totally fair, and I understand that. On the other hand, there's some people that really love their work and they'll be working like 60, 50, 70 hours a week, and they've got themselves into this pattern. And those are the ones that I think where there's opportunity to really go, how do I redo this?
But that pattern's quite addictive, right? Because you get good at something, you get that feedback in the brain, and then you want to go again and
I do think there is an industry problem in a lot of corporations. There is a sort of a somewhat puritanical and somewhat punitive belief. If there are 8 hours of work, you do 8 hours of work, which is a little bit mad, I think, because sometimes you have quiet weeks and sometimes you've got 2 hours of work to do, and then you have to sit at the computer with this sinking anxiety.
Well, I'm always reminded, and you would know better than I, Chris, how much quality work do we have in us a day? 4 to 5 hours, 4 or 6 hours or something like that, max.
Yeah. At best. And you maybe you had a really busy week last week and then you've got a quiet week, but you still have to pretend to be productive.
Yeah.
I think that is madness. And I used to run a team of producers and I'd always say to them, some weeks you're going to work outside of your work hours and that will be kind of unavoidable. But it just means that on the counter, if there's nothing to do, just be quietly not busy.
Yeah.
I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to account for you. Like I'm not counting the hours.
Yeah.
I trust that you're doing work when you've got the work. And if you can do the work in 30 minutes instead of 2 hours, great.
I mean,
go get a coffee.
That's awesome because I think that's now getting into a leadership conversation, and that's what it takes sometimes is for leaders to really look at their team and say, not how many things have you got done this week, but how happy are you in your life? And why don't we start a conversation around that at work? Why don't we start a conversation, well, how's your life going? Because if people are there to contribute or do all those things, they're going to do that naturally. But if you can help them with their thinking about how this fits into their broader life, like you've done, and creating space for them and creating that time, that's leadership. I reckon that's the call here.
I think that interestingly, I think there is more of that happening. And I don't know, I'm going to make a wild, broad statement here, but I kind of think that millennials often are kind of at the new wave of bosses, millennial bosses, I think has changed things a little bit. They've got a slightly different view to work, which I think is also reflected in Generation Z. That might not be fair. I don't want to heap any shit on Gen X, sorry, but that's been what I've broadly seen.
Yeah.
Does that track for?
Well, the data is sort of showing with the younger generations coming through. So Gen Z would be that a lot of them are actually saying they don't want to be in leadership roles.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, so
good for them.
The interesting thing is, and we have to really why they're sort of asking, well, why would I take on that extra responsibility?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Why would they?
And I think it's an interesting thing with AI and how that's going to play out is how do those roles morph? If you're in a middle management role, what's the value that you create for people? Isn't just going to be about doing the reporting and doing stock taking of things. It's going to be on adding more value. So to be able to do that, you have to be rested, and bring it back to that rest concept of being busy isn't going to be enough going forward because AI is going to be able to do a lot of things.
Yep.
For us, they're going to be able to do a lot of busy work. So what's the value as people that we bring into this? It's our creativeness. It's our ability to step out from looking at just what's happening now.
It's our humanity.
Oh, I love that. Yeah.
That is our goal. It's like I so agree with this. I think that you and I we've been drinking the same Kool-Aid because there is not a single thing that you've said.
Shop, haven't we?
Yeah, we sure have because I so fundamentally agree with all of this, and I think that the idea of seeing people as like little robots where it's input in, creativity out or output. And I think that we are now reaching this fundamental shift where we actually have to rethink this a lot.
It's a really big psychological change, right? It's from busy to rest to productive to effective.
Yeah.
A lot more thought.
Yeah.
Because we won't be able to outcompete algorithms and AI models. We won't. We have to now, I think more than ever, lean into our humanity. And that is those are the businesses I think that will survive are the ones that actually see people as people and not badly trained robots.
That's where it really excites us at Tribeca. A lot of the menial or admin-based work that people don't genuinely enjoy, you can take that away. And for us, we really lean into people around advice, so that EQ and the IQ and helping people understand what's truly important to them is really exciting for us. We can spend more time with the humans.
Yep.
A lot of what you said is, from our various conversations, is that part of what you do is helping people work out the best way to spend their money. But a lot of it, from our conversations, feels like it's kind of therapy.
Yeah.
It's like what matters to you?
Well, people are on that treadmill. They're just in it, and sometimes they feel there's not a way out. Yeah. For someone who genuinely cares and 2 ears, 1 mouth, and asks some of the right questions. Listen, we help people work out what their journey should be. It's not our journey. Yeah. It's theirs. How do we help them?
Yeah, and I don't think that, computers are very good at aping empathy, but they're not. That they don't have empathy, whereas like empathy is something that is actually sort of, our birthright. That is why we were sort of put on the planet. Anyway, I could go on about this. But back on the topic of burnout, what's something that you see that companies do that makes burnout worse?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of things. I think a lot of companies struggle with, firstly, around how do they measure a job, and how do they design those jobs? Are you designing it for the widget? Where, all right, well, we need to have this person productive for 8 hours a day, or 7.6 or 6.6, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Or are you designing it with the mind of what value does that job really bring? If you're thinking about value, then you'll be thinking about, well, how do we just keep evolving that and doing something different? So I think that's the first one, is thinking about how you set goals, because that then sets priorities. And one habit I've seen, particularly in larger organisations, and I've seen this in smaller ones too, there's this tendency to try and do all the things. Yeah, we want to be the market leader in this, but we also want to do this, and it becomes really confusing for people. The strategy's not being really clear on what's our key one thing that we're going after, and that creates panic when you're trying to do lots of different things.
Yeah.
And you'll see this, I'm sure you've felt
panic.
this. It's next. Hold on, we're not doing that. We've just spent 2 weeks doing this project. Well, there was a meeting last week. At the end of it, they decided we're not going to do that anymore. And now this week there's a new thing. So that focus, that disciplined focus, I think is a massive thing that I notice when I'm talking to people, working with founders or executives, and they feel powerless to do anything about that. And so the shift for me is being really courageous, to say, actually, this is the one thing. Priorities has been misused as a word. Mm-hmm. It should just be priority. It's one thing. This is the one thing that we're going after. And I think if you can do that, you're going to create so much coherence and clarity in your business.
Can you elaborate more on that, Christian, around founders feeling helpless? What do you mean by that? Can you take us through that?
Yeah, I think people feel like they have to, once you're on the quarterly cycle of needing to get a number, mm-hmm. or chasing a revenue target or wherever that is, you're feeling like you're on the hamster wheel of just chasing that.
It's just 13 weeks, 13 weeks.
Yep. And I think it's a habit that you become used to, and you're chasing it. So, often I'm talking to them about, well, how do you just break that habit? How do you really focus on what you can control in the quarter? And a lot of things you can't, but you can put your best intentions into just being able to control those and being really clear with your team around one thing that they can focus on.
So it's more of a focus on the inputs as opposed to the results, dare I say.
Yep, absolutely, yep.
So much of this seems very, common sense to me. Treat people like people, give them certainty, don't do 1,000 things, pick it. Why is this not making it? Why do we have so many bad organisations? What's going wrong in Australia?
Yeah, I think in some ways we do have a lot of good ones still that are leading the way, and there's some good stories out there of companies. So it isn't all bad, but I think there's these patterns which we've just become accustomed to. Like me, when I grew up working, the expectation, I remember I was taught this model of what makes success in this company is performance, image, and exposure. And that was the three things that I was told. So perform, what you do, the image and how you represent yourself, and who you meet with. That's the exposure part. That if I said that now, people just even you both looking at me funny, right? That's such so things have just changed so much, and my dad actually says to me all the time when I was working in corporate, he'd say, "So Christian, you got this new job now. Do you have an office, and do you have a secretary? And that's where we're coming from. That's the state. Yeah. That's the mindset. And that worked for a long time. That was the model, and it worked. But now things have changed. As you said, Steph, the environment has completely changed. Things are so uncertain. So I think a lot of this is conditioning. It's a lot of assumptions that have been built into our mental models of what work is.
And so it takes leaders particularly being brave, Christian, not throwing at the script in some sense and go, what am I here to do? How are we focusing on it? Are we really purpose-based, and how do we build it around that?
Yeah, absolutely.
It does. As someone who was, in a small but leadership position in a company I was in, it did feel very subversive when I said to people, it's like, if the job gets done, that's it. And the result of that was far and away, I think, I'm biased. I love the people I hired. I think we had the best performing team in that company. They were really helpful. They worked outside of their role. If they needed to, they'd work extra hours. And if they were quiet, I just just be quietly not busy, just don't sit around playing video games on your phone or whatever, but just, work from home those days and do something else.
Sounds like, Steph, you built high levels of trust and you got a lot of volunteer effort.
Yeah.
But I think that is, but it did still feel because, and I, as someone who started work in a really competitive industry where it was a 10-hour day, no break, I had seen that hadn't been great for me, but that is still conditioned into me, this view that you always need to be busy, you always need to be in a meeting.
Yeah.
And I think that that's also in corporations created this annoying thing where if people don't have anything to do, they'll put a bloody meeting in my calendar.
Yeah. The meeting.
My God. You can see in a corporation who hasn't got enough to do because they start like, just want to have a, 5-minute session on this or feel like we should get together and talk about this.
And
then
a meeting without an agenda.
That's the base level is a meeting without agenda. And then everybody talks and then a bunch of dot points come out of it, none of which get done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, we have one precious life.
Yeah. This isn't worth it. This is not worth it. No. But I mean, even challenging those, I think that's a really good place to start is looking at your meetings. How do you use them? What are they used for? So I ran this experiment in my team. We said we want to kill off meetings. So, and one of the other teams in the 4-day workweek experiment, they ran this thing called Meeting Machete. And so they just slashed all these meetings. We loved it. It was this campaign, Meeting Machete campaign. It was just this super simple thing. They just asked their team, what meetings can we get rid of? And they looked at the diary and they just did a full reset. Just completely changed their whole system in a day. And it took them 30 minutes to go through those appointments and figure out what they could
everyone knew what they wanted to get rid of.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We really hate that meeting. And everyone knows it.
Yeah.
You go to these things, why are we here again? Oh, yeah, because we've got to do that PowerPoint.
It's the elephant in the room.
Yep. So meetings are a great space to start to cut. If you're trying to if you could do a 4-day work week, I could guarantee you meetings is going to fuel it. It will absolutely find you the space particularly in bigger companies where there's lots of meetings.
Have you heard of any businesses that have just cut out emails completely, or how do they minimise emails? Because this just seems to be another.
Oh.
Bring back carrier pigeons, I say.
I agree. Bring back telegrams.
Yeah, exactly.
Email's not necessarily the problem. It's all the other tools that we've now got. So you have email, you'll have WhatsApp, you might have a Signal group if you're in the White House.
I was going to say, if you're in US politics.
You've got Teams or you've got Slack or something else.
I'm like, yep.
So my advice is kill off as many of those as you can and have one source of truth.
So you start with the tech machete.
Yeah, do the tech machete. Exactly, yeah. So, I think if you're a Slack company, use Slack. Don't send internal emails. Use Slack as your primary thing. Save your emails for your external client stuff.
Okay.
Or if you're Teams, do the same thing with Teams. It doesn't really matter. I'm really agnostic, although I like the emojis in Slack.
So start with the structure first.
Start with the structure. Think about what tools you need and how are you using them. That's a really simple way to cut some time out as well.
Are there any other gems like this? I think that's such a smart idea, but what else have you found to be very effective?
One is a mindset piece around distractions. And there's this really great guy that I've spent a lot of time listening to called Oliver Burkeman, and he talks about this idea of distraction. And the idea is you have to accept that your day is going to be filled with distractions. And a lot of the productivity things and tools and hacks are all about removing distraction from your day. And the example is, even this morning, I was trying to get ready for this podcast and reading through the questions, and my daughter came down, stepped into the space I work, and Dad, what time are we going? What are we doing for breakfast? And asked me a million questions. Now, just have to accept this is part of life. It's important that I don't react in that moment to that distraction, and just accepting distractions that are an everyday thing and just taking the most of that. Now, I fall in the trap too. So, all right, yeah, we're going soon, all right? But if you can accept that, firstly, distractions are just an everyday thing, you'll be a lot happier in your life. Another really simple tool is Calendly. So if you're trying to book meetings, that's a really simple tool you can use to save yourself the back and forward with booking things in. There's lots of little hacks like that you can find out there.
If there's something a toxic habit that a CEO does that you would like to put an end to tomorrow, can you think of one?
There's definitely the prioritization piece came to mind. And then things like decision making. Sometimes meetings get called because we don't know who the decision maker is. So in some ways, a toxic habit is being the decision maker as a CEO. What decisions can you pass down to your team? How can you trust more people to make decisions so you can have more space and more creativity for your own work and the way you're thinking about your business? But perhaps the thing that the way I'd frame this is, if you're the CEO of Qantas or Jetstar, your asset is your planes, and you're sending those planes all around the world, interstate, and you have to service those planes. And you've got to make sure that they're rested and they've got to be checked and they're going to be okay to take your passengers because they're your biggest assets. So we've got to think about the habit is rest and recovery. That's the thing that we need to start building into our business and the way we think about things. The same way you do with a plane. You are not running your planes at 100% capacity because you're going to have a massive impact on those assets. So I think that would be the shift that I'd love to see more organisations thinking about is rest fuels performance.
I so desperately agree with that as a philosophy generally, that you are employing people, not machines, and that is a strength.
Yep.
It's a strength. And if you lean into that, then you will actually have happier people. Yeah. And personally, the thing I would love to change in Australia, first and foremost, and I'm not talking to anyone here who doesn't agree with me, is actually prioritising people.
Yep.
It's like you make decisions based on the people you employ.
Yep.
They're not just spreadsheets, they're humans
yep.
with lives, and on a certain level you do have to respect that.
Yep.
And if you make decisions that put the people who have entrusted their lives to you in a certain way, because, wages are how you feed your family and whatever, if you respect that and you see them as humans, they will give back to you so much more.
Oh, absolutely.
And it will be better for your business, and it will be better for Australia, and it will be better for, humanity as a whole if we don't just treat people so disposably. Yeah. And I reckon I think we're in like sort of this turning point at the moment where there's a lot of change and uncertainty, but I so fully believe that the people who lean into that will have better businesses and happier people.
Well, and I go back to, Christian's stat earlier around, up to 80% facing burnout. So if we take that 5 or 6 hours a day that people can work, and I like numbers, obviously, that's 60 to 75%. You might have people working 120% capacity at the moment. Yeah. That's why you're up to 80%.
Yeah, absolutely.
People are well overworked by up to double what they should be.
Yeah. And just the amount that's coming in at them during that time is a lot more than what it used to be. But I really love what you said, Steph. It's human beings before human doings. And I think if we could drill that into every person that's making decisions about how they run their teams, that would be great.
Well, I think that's a good place to end this one. Christian, thank you so much for coming in, having a chat. How should people get in touch with you if they're interested in having a conversation about your work?
Just come to the website. It's probably the best place. So it's thrivenation.au.
Beautiful. And make sure that you are following this podcast so you never miss an episode. We'll see you next time. Advice given in this podcast is general in nature and is not intended to influence decisions about investing or financial products. Our listeners should always seek their own professional advice that considers their own personal circumstances before making any financial decisions.